So this is a story all about how my life got flipped turned upside down when I basically failed my A-levels. Before I start, if any of you have not seen the video of the Slater and Gordon lawyer singing the rules of employment law to the tune of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, then you need to watch it, and I will link it or at least direct you to it in the description below. Hello, welcome back to LAB. We're going to talk a little bit about my journey into law today and how I got to where I got to in the face of academic adversity. But before I launch headlong into the whole story, I do just want to let you know in advance that this is not a video whereby I give you one simple magic trick which will absolve you of all your prior academic sins. This is quite a long video, probably. I'm sensing it already, and there is no easy solution to this. There were a lot of things that I did to help me get to where I get to. So if you're looking for a quick fix, this is not the video for you. For those of you that are still here, if you're sitting comfortably, then I'll begin. If you've watched my very first intro video that I ever did, you will know that I actually spent my youth being home educated rather than in traditional education. I didn't go to school until quite late on in life. And I took my GCSEs in school, and I actually did pretty well in my GCSEs, pretty much because I knew virtually everything that I had to know for my GCSEs before I actually went into school. But when it came to learning all new stuff in order to prepare for my A-levels, I didn't get on so well in the school environment. It was just so alien from how I'd learned before in a kind of one-to-one personal environment. Going into school with 30 people in the class, loads of people my own age, everything that went with being a teenager amongst lots of boys and girls my own age definitely threw off my studying, and as a result I did very, very poorly in my A-levels. And when I say to a lot of people that I didn't do quite as well as I'd hoped in my A-levels, I normally get some kind of response that's like, oh yeah, I got 3 Bs, total nightmare, don't worry about it. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're dealing with right here. That's not the scale. You need to go and stand in a successful person pile, which is not where I'm standing. So I've worked out that I think this is the first time that I've ever actually said my A-levels out loud, or I'm gonna say them out loud, because I remember picking up my envelope from school, showing my parents, which was a really fun experience. And then ever since then, I've just had to write them on application forms, also really fun. So this is actually gonna be the first time that I'm gonna say them out loud, and it's gonna be to my entire subscriber audience. Excellent. This is hard. This is not a fun moment for me. Okay, I'm just gonna say them out loud super quick. I got a C, a D, and 2 E's. Band-aid is off. Boom, fixed, over, it's done. Okay, so pretty poor, really, when it comes to a career in law. What did I do at that stage? I had been provisionally accepted to study biosciences and various derivatives thereof at a load of universities all around the country, but they were conditional on me obtaining a minimum of ABB or similar, which obviously I didn't do. So I was then launched into this pool of people who had failed to meet their predicted grades and were scrambling through clearing. Had a look through clearing, just really wasn't engaged with any of the possibilities that were available through clearing. I really had my heart set on going to Birmingham Uni, which had been my first choice unequivocally. And I just wanted to find some way of going to Birmingham Uni that didn't involve me resitting my A-levels, which I rather would have stuck pins in my eyes than done at that stage. So I had to go the back way a little bit, and I basically called Birmingham Uni and said, is there any course that you will let me into that's similar to the one that I want to do, or is there any way that I can get onto this course again? The reason that I wanted to do bioscience was because I ultimately wanted to become a vet, but I needed 3 A's to become a vet, and I wasn't predicted 3 A's. So my plan all along had been to go through the biosciences route and then qualify as a vet later. So I still wanted to do that, despite the fact that I was now in an even worse position than I thought I was going to be in when it came to going to vet school. So I basically spoke to somebody from Birmingham Uni and said, look, here's my position. I really want to come to university. These are my goals. What can you do to help me? And having been basically rejected by most of the people that I spoke to on the phone, I eventually got through someone who was quite sympathetic about my situation. And she said to me, look, the reality is you're not going to get into the biosciences or any similar course with the grades that you have. But the only thing that we can offer you is an access course, so a foundation course in a science subject, which if you do really well and get a first in, you will then be able to access your original course that you wanted to go on next year. So I thought, happy days, great, I can do an access course in biology and I'll be on the right track again in a year's time. No, there was no access course in biology or biosciences. The only foundation course that they offered was in chemistry, which was an absolute nightmare. If I didn't mention this at the beginning, the A-level subjects I did were biology, chemistry, physics, and maths. So not the easiest of subjects, but with those grades and those subjects, I could get into chemistry, the foundation year. So that's what I did, and I worked really hard and I absolutely bossed my first year and got a first. And then in my second year of university, I then essentially went into the first year of the biosciences course that I'd wanted to study all along. Brilliant. Had 3 further amazing years at university, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the course. Took up a number of positions of responsibility in various different university societies, which is important for later. And in my summers in between uni, I actually worked in Ibiza, also in various different roles. So club rep, club PR, barmaid, waitress, loads of different stuff, which also turned out to be really important later on. So I did my whole uni course, and as I was coming to the end of it, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, because the thought of going to vet school, having spent 4 years at uni, just really didn't appeal. It was going to be another 4 or 5 years and I really just didn't want to do it anymore. So I went to my careers advisor to find out what sorts of things other people do with biosciences degrees, with a specialism in animal biology, which is what I ultimately ended up specialising in my final year. And it turned out that the main 3 options were 1, teaching, didn't want to do that. 2, research, also didn't want to do that. And the third one, funnily enough, was law. And I'd never really thought about a career in law before. I knew a few people, had a few friends who were lawyers, and their style of living did not appeal. Lots of paperwork, long hours, big, stuffy offices, not for me. But when the careers advisor put this idea in my head, and he actually said that one of his colleagues was an injury lawyer in the clinical negligence context and how interesting his job was, I started to look into it a little bit further, did a little bit of work experience, realised quite soon after I started looking into this that there was going to be a 2-year lag period. So if I wanted to do the law conversion and start straight away, I was going to have to start applying for training contracts right there and then, which I did. Fairly unsuccessfully, as you can imagine, because I had about a week until most of the deadlines closed when I started making those applications, and I had no idea what I was doing. I did a total scattergun approach, applied to all kinds of different firms, far and wide, big, small, corporate, commercial, private client, all sorts of stuff, just on the off chance that I was going to get an offer. So was not successful in my final year. However, having not been successful in my final year, I then used my summer after I graduated from uni with a solid 2-1 in bioscience, animal biology, and used that to do a whole load of work experience, both legal and non-legal, over that summer. So I had a couple of friends who were in law, so I asked if I could shadow them for a few days. But then all of my other work experience I literally got by just sending letters to local law firms and the local court, telling them my position and just saying that I just wanted a couple of days work experience. And I was surprised at how many people actually responded. I think I sent about 20 and I got 3 back, but that was better odds than I actually thought were realistic. So I did those 3 placements, and then off the back of those placements I actually got other ones, because those people introduced me to other people in the industry who I then capitalised on from a networking point of view and managed to get work experience with them as well. So I think I had something like 6 or 7 legal work placements in addition to my non-legal work on my CV by the time I actually started my conversion course. And then when I started my conversion course, I was in a much better position to start applying for training contracts that time round. So when it came to applying for training contracts, what did I do about the fact that I had such terrible A-levels? Well, the first thing that I did, following some really solid advice from my careers advisor at University of Law, who was amazing, was to be really selective about where I applied to. He said to me, there is just no point in you applying to some firms which have really high grade requirements and they place really heavy weight on grades, because that's just not where you're strongest. You are strongest in your transferable skills and your work experience and everything else that you've done in life. So you need to be selective about where you apply to. Tip number 1, be selective about where you apply to. So fortunately, I wanted to do injury and clinical negligence law, And a lot of the firms that I wanted to apply to who are really strong in those areas did not focus as heavily on academics as some of the corporate and commercial firms. So I was fortunate in that respect. Did I talk about my mitigating circumstances in the box that you're given to talk about those things? I actually didn't, because I think mitigating circumstances boxes are a double-edged sword. So you get some recruiters who are really sympathetic, and if you were really ill or you had an unexpected death in the family and you had to take some time away from studies, you will get some recruiters who completely sympathise with that and give you the benefit of the doubt. However, there's the flip side, where you get some recruiters, particularly at the bigger firms where they really want to work you really hard, you will get some recruiters who essentially look at your mitigating circumstances, and if it transpires that you were unwell or someone in the family died, they will essentially read that and go, okay, we're to understand by this that if you're unwell or someone in the family dies, either of which might happen again at some point in your life, you are not going to be able to perform in those circumstances. And that can sometimes be a turn off for some recruiters, because essentially they don't want to see weakness. I know that sounds terrible, but I'm just telling you how it is. There's two schools of thought on it. I personally decided not to go with writing about mitigating circumstances. Firstly, because I didn't think they were all that great, in all honesty. And secondly, because I was slightly worried that that might be viewed as me exhibiting a weakness. Rightly or wrongly, that's an ethical discussion that we're not having today, but that was my view at the time. So I leave it up to you as to whether, if you have mitigating circumstances, you want to put those in that box. But my piece of advice would be on that. Make sure they are really strong mitigating circumstances if you're going to put them in that box. And don't try and kind of palm off a cold as the reason why you didn't do so well, because it will only detract from your application rather than add to it. What else did I do? I really used all of the opportunities that were available to me at University of Law. There was so much going on. The careers department was amazing. They helped me so much, not just with my actual application structure, but also with deciding where I wanted to apply to and how I could go about applying to those places and what connections that I could make in order to help me get my foot in the door. So I used all of those connections. Every single event that was hosted at University of Law, I went to and I spoke to people and I tried to get my foot in the door with the firms that I wanted to apply to. And by the time I actually got to applying, which was a few months after I started my GDL, I was already on a first name basis with a couple of the recruiters and a number of solicitors within the firm, which turned out to be a massive help. So that is tip number 3, I think, if that's what we're on. Tip number 3, use every single available opportunity to you. Next piece of advice, I drafted my applications to really highlight the strong points. Quite often application forms are done on a points basis, so you have a certain number of points allocated for academics, a certain amount for work experience, a certain amount for competencies or transferable skills. So if you are weak in academics, you have to be super strong in all of the other categories, but if you are, you can help to bring your average up. Of course, there are some firms which will attach additional weight to your academics, which may mean that you can't pull up your average by being strong in other areas, but then that comes back to being really selective about where you apply to. So the outcome of this story is a successful one, obviously. I was offered a training contract at the end of my first year to my first choice firm, which I went on to train at, and I'm still there now. So it was a really successful outcome to what initially seemed like a complete dead end to my career in whatever direction I wanted to go in. So it can be done. It's not easy, it's not fun, it requires a lot of hard work, but it can be done, particularly as the landscape's opening up going forward and there are multiple different ways to qualify. We are going to be abolishing the training contract route, which is so competitive, and there are going to be more opportunities for you going forward. So stay optimistic, keep working hard, and you will get there, and I'm here to help you in as many ways as I can. I hope that's been helpful. Please let me know what you think about this video, whether you want me to do similar ones going forward, and I will catch up with you again next week. Bye guys!